There is something deeply wrong with the food in your refrigerator. You buy fresh strawberries on Monday. By Thursday, they're moldy. 3 days. Your lettuce turns to slime within a week. Your bread molds in 5 days despite the preservatives. In 1450, a Scottish farmer made butter in June that his family ate in December. 6 months. No refrigeration, no preservatives. The butter sat in a clay crock in a cool cellar and stayed perfectly edible for half a year. Today, your refrigerated butter expires in 1 month. Your milk, ultra-pasteurized and sealed, lasts maybe 3 weeks before it smells off. Your fresh meat goes grey in 3 days. Even your eggs, refrigerated at 38 degrees Fahrenheit, are marked use by within 4 weeks. Something is fundamentally broken. For thousands of years, humans preserved food through entire winters without losing a single family member to food poisoning. They shipped butter across continents. They stored grain for years. They kept meat edible for months without a single ice cube. But your food, created with modern food science, refrigerated with advanced technology, treated with chemical preservatives, can't last a week before it's garbage. This isn't progress. This is sabotage, and the reason why will make you furious. Drop a comment right now. How often do you throw away spoiled food? Once a week? Every few days? Let us know, because what you're about to discover explains exactly why your food rots faster than food from 600 years ago. 1687. A farm in Yorkshire, England. The farmer's wife is making butter from yesterday's milking. But before she starts churning, she does something that would horrify modern health inspectors. She doesn't wash the butter churn. The wooden churn is decades old. Its interior is stained dark from years of use. Cracks in the wood harbour colonies of bacteria, lactic acid bacteria, the same bacteria used to culture yogurt. And when she pours fresh cream into that contaminated churn, those bacteria immediately go to work. They consume the lactose sugars in the cream. They produce lactic acid. The pH drops. The environment becomes acidic. And in that acidic environment, harmful bacteria can't survive. By the time she's finished churning, the butter is naturally cultured, slightly tangy, and protected by billions of beneficial bacteria that act as a living immune system. She packs this butter into a clay crock, covers it with a cloth soaked in salt water, stores it in a cool cellar at around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and that butter stays edible for 6 months, sometimes longer. No refrigeration, no preservatives, just beneficial bacteria creating an environment where spoilage organisms can't grow. Now look at your modern butter, made from ultra-pasteurized cream that's been heated to 280 degrees Fahrenheit. Every bacteria killed, good and bad. The cream is sterile, dead. It's churned in stainless steel machinery that's sanitized between every batch. No bacterial cultures, no living ecosystem, just dead cream beaten into submission. Then it's packaged in plastic or foil, refrigerated at 38 degrees Fahrenheit, and it expires in 3 weeks. Why? Because there's no bacterial defense system. The butter is dead, and the moment any contamination touches it, mold or harmful bacteria, there's nothing to fight back. The spoilage organisms have no competition. Medieval butter was alive. Your butter is a corpse, and corpses rot fast. But wait, it gets worse. Here's what you need to understand. Food doesn't spoil because it's old. Food spoils because harmful microorganisms, bacteria, mold, and yeast colonize it and break it down. Medieval food preservation worked by creating environments where beneficial microorganisms outcompeted harmful ones. The good bacteria were so dominant that bad bacteria couldn't establish colonies. Sauerkraut. Cabbage fermented with salt. The lactic acid bacteria multiply so rapidly that they acidify the cabbage within days. That acidic environment kills harmful bacteria. The sauerkraut stays edible for a year or more. No refrigeration needed. Salami. Ground pork mixed with salt and beneficial bacteria, then hung to dry. The good bacteria acidify the meat. The drying removes moisture that mold needs. The result? Meat that hangs at room temperature for months without spoiling. Cheese. Milk cultured with specific bacteria or mold. Those microorganisms dominate the cheese, preventing harmful bacteria from growing. Medieval monasteries aged cheese for years. Some Italian cheeses age for a decade. Every traditional preservation method relied on beneficial microorganisms, creating hostile environments for spoilage organisms. Modern food processing destroys this system entirely. Pasteurization kills all bacteria. Sterilization kills all microorganisms. Chemical preservatives poison the environment for all life, good and bad. The result is food with no immune system, no defense. And the moment any contamination occurs, spoilage organisms have a sterile playground with zero competition. Your modern milk is ultra-pasteurized, dead. It might last 2 to 3 weeks sealed in your refrigerator, but the moment you open it, one stray bacteria gets in and it multiplies unchecked. Within days of opening, the milk starts turning, and once it goes bad, it doesn't transform into something useful. It just becomes rancid, disgusting, unusable. Medieval milk was raw or only lightly heated. It contained beneficial bacteria. When contamination occurred, those bacteria fought back. The milk clabbered, turned into a thick yogurt-like substance that was still edible and useful. It didn't go rancid. It transformed into a different, still nutritious food that could be used for baking or made into cheese. We traded living food for dead food, and dead food rots. In 1913, the first electric refrigerator was introduced for home use. It was marketed as revolutionary, modern, scientific, the solution to food spoilage. But here's what they didn't tell you. Refrigeration doesn't prevent spoilage. It slows it. That's all. Cold temperatures slow bacterial growth, but they don't stop it. Psychrophilic bacteria, cold-loving bacteria, thrive at refrigerator temperatures. They're just slower than bacteria that prefer warmth, so your food still spoils, just more slowly. And because it's refrigerated, you assume it's being preserved. It's not. It's dying a slow death. Medieval people didn't have refrigeration, so they used actual preservation methods: fermentation, salting, smoking, drying, storing in fat, burying in root cellars. These methods actively prevented spoilage. They didn't slow it. They stopped it by creating environments where spoilage organisms couldn't survive. Salt pork. Pork packed in salt. The salt draws out moisture. Bacteria can't grow without moisture. The pork stays edible for years. Sailors crossed oceans on salt pork that never spoiled. Smoked fish. Fish hung over smoke for days. The smoke deposits antimicrobial compounds on the surface. The drying removes moisture. The fish lasts for months at room temperature. Confit. Duck or pork cooked in its own fat, then stored submerged in that fat. The fat creates an oxygen-free environment. Bacteria need oxygen. No oxygen, no growth. The meat lasts for 6 months or more. These methods worked. Definitively. No refrigeration required. Modern food companies convinced you that refrigeration was preservation. It's not. It's just slow-motion spoilage. And it gave them an excuse to stop using real preservation methods. Because real preservation requires skill, time, traditional knowledge. Refrigeration requires electricity and plastic packaging. One is profitable, one isn't. 1950s. The rise of antibacterial everything. Antibacterial soap, sanitizers, bleach for every surface. The message was clear. Bacteria are the enemy. Kill them all. And we did. We sterilized our kitchens, our cutting boards, our storage containers. We created environments so hostile to bacteria that nothing could survive, including the beneficial bacteria that used to protect our food. Medieval kitchens were not sterile. Wooden cutting boards harbored bacterial colonies. Clay crocks had invisible biofilms. cheese caves were covered in beneficial molds. These bacterial ecosystems were essential for food preservation. A medieval butcher's wooden block had been used for 30 years. It was covered in microscopic grooves filled with beneficial bacteria. When he cut fresh meat on that block, those bacteria immediately colonized the meat surface, creating a protective layer that prevented harmful bacteria from establishing. Modern food safety regulations require plastic cutting boards that can be sanitized. The plastic is sterile. There's no protective bacterial layer. When you cut meat on that plastic, any contamination has no competition. Spoilage happens faster. Studies have confirmed this. Wooden cutting boards, especially well-used ones, have lower levels of harmful bacteria than new plastic boards. The beneficial bacteria in the wood actively suppress pathogenic bacteria. But health codes require plastic because it seems cleaner. The obsession with sterility destroyed the invisible ecosystems that preserved food for thousands of years. And here's the cruel irony. Despite all the sanitization, despite all the antibacterial products, food poisoning rates haven't decreased. In fact, foodborne illness affects more people now than before modern hygiene practices. Why? Because we killed the beneficial bacteria that prevented harmful bacteria from colonizing food. We created sterile environments where a single pathogenic bacteria can multiply unchecked. Medieval food was covered in bacteria, beneficial bacteria, and those bacteria protected against the harmful ones. Modern food is sterile until it's not, and then there's no defense. Walk into a medieval root cellar in November. The harvest is in, and stored in this dark, cool, humid space are vegetables that will feed the family until spring. Carrots buried in damp sand, beets in sawdust, turnips in straw, potatoes in wooden crates covered with burlap, apples wrapped in cloth and laid in rows. No refrigeration. Temperature around 35 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity around 90%, and these vegetables stay crisp and edible for 5 to 6 months. The secret? They're still alive. A carrot buried in damp sand continues its slow cellular processes. It breathes. It regulates moisture. It maintains its structure. It's not rotting because it's not dead. Medieval people understood this instinctively. Vegetables aren't preserved by killing them. They're preserved by keeping them alive but dormant. Now look at your modern vegetables. Picked weeks before they're ripe, shipped thousands of miles, stored in refrigerated warehouses, sprayed with chemicals to prevent sprouting or ripening. By the time you buy them, they're barely alive. Stressed, damaged, their cellular defenses compromised. You put them in your refrigerator. The cold air dries them out. The humidity is wrong. Within a week, they're limp, moldy, rotting from the inside, because they were never preserved. They were just slowly dying from the moment they were picked. Medieval carrots were pulled from the ground and immediately buried in sand in a proper cellar. They went from living in soil to living in sand. The transition was minimal. Their cellular processes continued at a slowed rate. Your carrots were picked in California, shipped to a warehouse in Colorado, stored for 2 weeks, shipped to a distribution center in Illinois, stored again, shipped to your supermarket, put on a shelf under fluorescent lights, finally purchased and put in your refrigerator. By the time you eat them, they've been dying for 3 weeks. Is it any wonder they spoil in your fridge within days? The same pattern applies to all fresh produce. Medieval food stayed alive. Modern food is in various stages of death, and dead things rot. 1346. A monastery in France stores 500 bushels of wheat in a stone granary. The wheat is whole grain, the bran and germ intact, all the natural oils still present. That wheat stays edible for 3 years. No refrigeration, no sealed containers, just whole wheat stored in a cool, dry stone building. Fast forward to today. You buy whole wheat flour, it comes in a paper bag, you put it in your pantry. Within 6 weeks it smells rancid. The oils in the germ have oxidized, the flour is ruined. What changed? Medieval wheat was stored as whole kernels. The grain's outer layers protected the interior. The bran acted as a barrier against oxygen and moisture. The wheat kernel is designed by nature to last for years in storage. It's a seed. Its entire purpose is to survive until conditions are right for germination. When medieval people needed flour, they ground grain fresh, a few pounds at a time. The oils in the wheat germ were exposed to oxygen only when ground. They used the flour within days, before oxidation occurred. Modern wheat is milled at massive industrial facilities. The grain is ground into flour. The oils in the germ are immediately exposed to oxygen. By the time the flour reaches you, it's been oxidizing for weeks. Worse, most commercial flour has the germ removed entirely because those oils shorten shelf life. What you buy is just the starchy endosperm, nutritionally dead, but even then it still goes stale within months. Medieval people stored food in its most stable form and processed it only when needed. We process food weeks in advance, destroy its natural protections, then wonder why it spoils. The same pattern applies to nuts, seeds, and whole grains. Store them whole and they last for years. Grind them into flour or butter and they're rancid within weeks. In 2003, researchers analysed traditional fermented foods from cultures around the world: Korean kimchi, German sauerkraut, Ethiopian injera, Japanese miso. They found that properly fermented foods contained bacterial populations so dominant that harmful bacteria couldn't establish colonies even when deliberately introduced in laboratory settings. The beneficial bacteria weren't just preserving the food, they were actively defending it. Another study from 2011 tested the antimicrobial properties of traditional preservation methods: smoking, salting, fermenting, and storing in fat. Every traditional method showed strong antimicrobial activity. The foods were protected by chemical compounds, pH changes, or bacterial dominance. Modern preservation methods, pasteurization and chemical preservatives, showed protection only while the food remained sealed. Once opened, spoilage occurred rapidly because there was no living defense system. A 2018 analysis of food waste in developed countries found that 30 to 40% of food purchased is thrown away uneaten. The primary reason? Spoilage before consumption. In medieval Europe, food waste was nearly zero. Food that couldn't be eaten fresh was preserved. Preserved food lasted months or years. Nothing went to waste because real preservation worked. We've built a food system that generates massive waste because the food spoils before we can eat it. And we accept this as normal. Want food that lasts like medieval food did? Here's exactly what to do. First, buy food that's still alive. Vegetables from farmers' markets, ideally with dirt still on them. Whole grains, not flour. Raw milk if you can access it legally, or the least processed dairy you can find. Living food has natural defenses. Dead, processed food doesn't. Second, store food properly. Not just in the refrigerator. Use traditional methods. Ferment your vegetables. Make sauerkraut. Buy a fermenting crock or use a jar. Chop cabbage, add salt, pack it down, let it ferment for a week. The kraut lasts for months at room temperature and improves with age. Store root vegetables in a cool, dark place with high humidity. A basement corner with damp sand or sawdust. Carrots, beets, turnips, potatoes, all last for months this way. Buy whole grains and grind them fresh. A small grain mill costs $50. Store wheat berries, oats or rice in sealed containers. They last for years. Grind only what you need for the week. Make your own cultured butter. Buy cream from grass-fed cows. Let it sit at room temperature for 12 to 24 hours to culture naturally. Then churn it. The cultured butter lasts 10 times longer than store-bought butter. Use traditional preservation for meat. Make your own bacon by curing pork belly in salt and sugar. The cured bacon lasts for months. Make confit by cooking duck in its own fat. Store it covered in fat in the refrigerator. It lasts for half a year. Third, stop sanitizing everything. Use wooden cutting boards and let them develop a bacterial ecosystem. Don't bleach your fermentation crocks. Don't sterilize storage containers unless you're canning. The beneficial bacteria are your allies. They protect your food. Killing them makes food more vulnerable, not less. Fourth, learn to recognize when fermented food is still good. Sauerkraut gets more sour over time. That's not spoilage. That's continued fermentation. Cheese develops stronger flavors as it ages. That's maturation, not rotting. Medieval people knew the difference between food transforming and food spoiling. Modern people have lost that knowledge and throw away perfectly good fermented foods because they taste too strong. If it smells pleasantly sour or tangy, it's probably fine. If it smells like rot or decay, discard it. Trust your nose. It evolved to detect actual spoilage. If this video opened your eyes to why your food rots so fast, hit that like button now. Subscribe because we're exposing the food systems that create waste while claiming to be modern and scientific. Share this with someone who's tired of throwing away spoiled food every week. Send it to anyone interested in food preservation and traditional methods that actually work. The Scottish farmer storing butter for 6 months wasn't lucky. She was using methods perfected over thousands of years. Methods that worked because they understood food as a living system, not a dead product. We traded living food for sterile food. We traded beneficial bacteria for antibacterial chemicals. We traded real preservation for refrigeration and preservatives. We traded knowledge for convenience. And now we waste 40% of the food we buy because it spoils before we can eat it. We throw away moldy bread, sour milk, rotten vegetables, and rancid flour. All while claiming our food system is advanced. Medieval food didn't spoil fast because medieval people knew how to preserve it. They fermented, salted, smoked, dried, and stored food in ways that kept it alive and protected. Modern food spoils fast because we've destroyed every natural defense system. We've killed the bacteria that protected it. We've processed it into dead matter that can only rot. The solution isn't more refrigeration or stronger preservatives. It's returning to preservation methods that actually work. Methods that keep food alive, defended by beneficial microorganisms, protected by traditional knowledge. Your food spoils in a week. Medieval food lasted for months. One approach respected food as a living system. The other treats it as an industrial product. The choice is yours. The knowledge was never lost. It was just abandoned in favor of systems that create waste and dependence. And every time you ferment vegetables or culture butter or store grains properly, you reclaim the food preservation wisdom that kept people fed through entire winters when one crop failure meant starvation. Subscribe. Let's keep digging up what they buried.